Well, good morning, everyone. I really hope you had a good night. I did. And I made myself go to bed rather than watch the Obamas, but you can get them online if you want to. You can get the whole speech. That's a wonderful thing these days. You can get your rest and also watch something that was on very late. So anyway, let's once again, Carol, do you have announcements or anything? Something else, it's scratching along, okay. Is that better? You can hear okay? All right, okay. So we're going to do our 3 deep breaths again, okay, just to get us here. So let's start with 1 deep breath just to be here. And let's take a 2nd deep breath to be here in union with each other and the whole earth community. And a 3rd breath to be open to the transforming action of the Holy One. And let's sing together.
Tune our heart with
And let's remember that what we do here today holds our whole entire suffering world and universe in love. And so we pray, may I be fully open and fully responsive to your grace. May I be exactly who you need and desire me to be at this moment in the unfolding of the universe. So over these past couple days, we've been invited to remember and bask in the knowledge that God is madly in love with us and continually shows us that love in our ever unfolding universe. We've been opening ourselves to wonder, the wonder all around us and the wonder within us. And we've dared to desire, to touch the deepest longings within ourselves and know them as the very desires of divine love for us. Today, we're invited to open to the path of transformation. Now remember, your chapter documents talk a lot about transformation and the transforming hope of God's love, okay? We're going to spend our time with the experience of transformation and the way in which struggle, vulnerability, and the cross are an inevitable and essential part of the journey. It's this path of transformation that leads us to the reason for the hope that is within us. The entire ever-unfolding universe, the whole of creation, cosmogenesis itself, operates according to the laws and dynamics of transformation. Everything that goes on follows the laws of transformation, the dynamics of that. And we're going to talk about what those are exactly. We talk a lot about transformation, especially more and more. It's in documents, it's in stuff we say, But I don't know that we always stop and take a real close look at what transformation actually is and what it involves. So just what does transformation look like? What does it mean? What does it cost to really open ourselves individually and collectively to the embrace of the transforming action of the Spirit? T.S. Eliot in Little Gidding, the last of the four quartets, speaks of a condition of complete simplicity costing not less than everything. A condition of complete simplicity costing not less than everything. Genuine transformation costs not less than everything. And isn't that what drew us to religious life in the first place? The possibility of a life that would ask everything we had to give, costing not less than everything. Isn't this the deepest longing of our hearts? To give ourselves wholly to something larger than ourselves. To allow the Holy One to sing us as no one has ever sung us before, as no one else could ever sing us. And the only way to come to this kind of fullness and joy is by following the path of transformation. We have to throw our whole lot in without reserve. So let's take a look at the path of transformation. Just what are the dynamics of transformation? Well, probably the most widely used example is the change from caterpillar to butterfly. Let me go back just for a moment. Isn't that the most handsome caterpillar you've ever seen? I think it's really it must be a 4, don't you think? But that caterpillar becomes this butterfly, okay? And we look at it and we say, wow, that's pretty amazing, okay? And the analogy may seem a little warm or tired at this point because it's being used a lot lately, with good reason. But I want to invite us to look more closely and to explore more deeply what's going on here. I want to suggest that we often miss the heart of the story about transformation because we almost always go directly from caterpillar to, there's an error in the slides, sorry. to butterfly, and we skip right over the cocoon. But what would happen if we were to focus on the cocoon for a bit? What if we were to open a cocoon and look inside? Basically, it seems to me that what we would find is a gooey mess. Not much worth looking at. Chaos at its finest. That's what it looks like inside the cocoon. It's nothing like the caterpillar, and it's nothing like the butterfly. Yet without the cocoon, without this stage of disillusion and seeming chaos, there never would be a butterfly. Now I want to point out something here because I became aware of it over the years, and I think it mirrors our own experience. Okay, if I look at the caterpillar and then at the butterfly, I find myself wondering, would the caterpillar recognize itself in the butterfly? I'm pretty sure she would not, because from the place where the caterpillar stands, it's unimaginable. It is infinitely more than she could ask or even imagine. And we are so like this little caterpillar, unable really to imagine who we might become if we open fully to the transforming action of the Holy One. We can't imagine it. We have to just kind of watch it happen and wonder at it. Okay? Likewise, I find myself wondering, would the butterfly recognize that it had been a caterpillar? I doubt it. I don't think it recognizes easily and readily that it is the caterpillar transformed. Maybe not at all. Just as it can be hard for us to remember really who we have been and how we have been and what we left behind in order to become who we are now in this moment. Take a moment right now and just think of yourself as a 20-year-old again. It's pretty hard to remember and then to imagine that that 20-year-old is this 80-year-old now. Yeah? All the things that have happened, all of who we have been that we are no longer because we're who we are now. Okay? Now, in this moment. So, here are the steps in the process of transformation, whether it's a caterpillar or ourselves or the trees outside or some little squirrel. The process of transformation is always the same. The dynamics are the same in every instance, okay? The dynamics are these. It begins with the dissolution of the old self as we knew it. The caterpillar's gone. The old self is gone and you can't get it back. There is no going back. We've been sent out beyond our recall. That 20-year-old is no more. Okay? Then there is this period of chaotic, creative messiness. And there's no getting to the other side of this without the mess. You cannot go around the cocoon and become a butterfly. You got to go into the cocoon, okay? So there's no getting to the other side without the mess, and it really is a mess. And the other thing is, there's no telling how long the period of chaotic, creative messiness will go on. But you all have known those periods. You may be in one right now yourself. Okay? And then there's the gradual emergence of the new. Note the word gradual. It's not like the cocoon pops open and here's a butterfly. There's the gradual emergence of the new. And eventually, very eventually, its coalescence into a new, vibrant, cohesive whole. And then the process starts all over again, all through our lives, okay? And part of the challenge is, it's Teilhard's words, trust the slow work of God. the slow work of God in yourself right now. Trust it. The process is slow. The other thing to notice is it's really not our work. It is the work of God. The caterpillar doesn't choose to go into, say, I think I'll go into the cocoon and I'm going to work inside there really hard to become a butterfly. It's not what, it lets go. It dissolves. And in the dissolution, the possibility of something truly new emerges. This is true for us as well. It is true of all the little transformations along the way, as well as the big transformation from this life to the next life. The experience of transformation that occurs in the cocoon literally is a remaking at the cellular level. Scientifically, it's a remaking at the cellular level. The creature that emerges really and truly is a new creation. The old self is gone, and there is grief in the going. And the new self has not yet emerged. This can leave us feeling lost or at loose ends. The period of chaotic creative messiness is disorienting and it's disconcerting, and without it there will be no butterfly. You all know these periods in your life. It's not all that long ago that I was talking to my spiritual director. And it's very unusual for me, but I just said, I'm a hot mess. And I was. We go through those periods. We don't look for them. We don't need, this is interesting. You don't need to look for the cross. You don't need to look for where will I find the next. It's going to find you. Whether you want it to or not, it's going to find you. Okay? Now, let me share with you a quote that has grasped my imagination for many years now. And it's one that touches me in a very deep way. I really know this experience of letting go that he's talking about. It's from Sebastian Moore's Jesus, the Liberator of Desire, which is, I think that's the book they could not find, and I'm not surprised. It's been out of print for years. In that book, at one point he says, we are more afraid of no longer needing what we have always needed than we are of actually losing it. And herein lies the impediment to spiritual growth. Let me read it again. We are more afraid of no longer needing what we have always needed than we are of actually losing it. And herein lies the impediment to spiritual growth. An essential aspect of the process of transformation is the dissolution of the old self, the only self we know. And it is only in and through this dissolution that the new can emerge. We do not take to this readily. We are afraid of no longer needing what we have always needed. And I think it's true because, first, we really have needed it, whatever the it is, and for whatever reasons that we may or may not know. And we don't recognize ourselves apart from the need. So let me give you a couple examples in terms of needing something, really needing it, and then you don't need it, but you're more afraid. This is a very early life example, but the little child with her blanket, and they hold the blankie and they rub the blankie, and they need that blankie. And if you take that too soon, you create enormous distress in the child. But there comes a day when, oops, they forgot their blankie, and they find themselves okay without it, but it's a surprise. It's a surprise. There are things all along the way in every phase of our life, and they can be little things or big things. I can remember a point, there are lots of things that I have needed that I don't need anymore, okay? And part of the issue, not only is it that we really have needed it, and it's that once we don't need it, we don't recognize ourselves apart from that need. It's like we don't know this new person that's emerging yet. Because it is a new creation that's coming forward. So here are a couple examples of that are really pretty clear. When I first moved to Silver Spring, Maryland, okay, I'd been embedded at first at CTU and then in the congregation leadership. I was the hub of a lot of things. And I was the place that people would, I liked to have parties for New Year's Eve and for Thanksgiving and for, so I'd have people, there was always something going on. And I was not the party girl, but pretty good at calling people together and having a good time, okay? And I had all these connections. So I go to Silver Spring, and I end up living in an apartment by myself, not because I wanted to live alone, but because that was the best option in terms of the ministry. That's what I needed to do. And I really didn't know anyone, So here I am, getting ready, moving into this new ministry, and I can remember a couple weeks in, maybe a month in, sitting in my apartment in prayer, and all of a sudden I started thinking, I'm not unhappy. I just don't recognize myself. I don't recognize myself here in this way, in these circumstances. Or another example of this, I had a really, really dear friend she had 6 children. She had 5 when I met her, 6. She became pregnant shortly after I met her. Anyway, she was a very heavy smoker, and that was kind of her friend, And she was trying to quit smoking, and she was really working at it. And we were talking about it one time, and she said, there and someone offers you a cigarette. I said, well, you could just say, no, thank you, I don't smoke. And she burst out laughing because she couldn't imagine herself saying, I don't smoke. She didn't know herself that way. That was part of her identity, part of what made her who she was. Okay? We really are more afraid of no longer needing what we've always needed than we are of actually losing it. And herein lies the impediment to spiritual growth. It's an essential way I have to invent things. Okay. Now, so we needed it and we don't recognize ourselves. I think this is true of us as religious women and true of our communities as it is, true of us individually. So think about the community. If I think about the Sisters of Providence, okay. We always, I love saying this because other people will then start listening, but back in the 40s and 50s when there was competition, not agreement or cooperation among, okay, we were the educators. And we were good educators, and we educated our women, and they were good teachers in the schools, okay? We don't have schools anymore. I mean, we got the college, but we don't even have a high school yet. You do, but we don't. Or there's a group of sisters who are known as the hospital sisters. They don't have any hospitals now. That doesn't mean that they don't have a mission. It doesn't mean that they don't have a purpose. It means that the externals are changing, something that was needed in terms of their identity. There are lots of things within communities that we think of as essential to who we are. And then we notice we don't need it anymore. But we don't recognize ourselves in the not needing. Okay? We really did need it, whatever the it was. And we are unable to recognize ourselves without it. But notice this too. After a while I started noticing this. The path to real freedom and transformations, not in not having, it's in no longer needing. Those are two different things. I can worry about not having something, but there's a difference between that feel and the feel of not needing something. I could have it or not. Like Paul, I'm content with little or with much. It's a different level of where you sit inside yourself and in life. Okay. So this work of transformation is about giving ourselves fully and completely to the living God, the God who comes to us from the future, an ever-renewing and evolving future. This is the deepest meaning of our vocation, really. Do you notice we often pray to a living God? It's said somewhere in the canon of the Mass. It's in lots of prayers that we say, you, the living God, etc. But sometimes I find myself wondering if we really do believe in a living God, a God that's dynamic and becoming and always inviting us to more. Okay? Do we really believe in a living God? Now, the dynamics, let me say the dynamics once more. The dissolution of the old self as we knew it, a period of chaotic creative messiness, the gradual emergence of the new, and eventually its coalition into a new, vibrant self. The paradigm of this kind of transformation in the entire history of the cosmos is the Paschal Mystery. And one of the most profound expressions of this paradigm is found in Paul's hymn to the Philippians. Your attitude must be that of Christ. Though he was in the form of God, he did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at. Rather, he emptied himself and took the form of a slave, being born in human likeness. He was known to be of human estate, and it was thus that he humbled himself, obediently accepting death, even death on a cross. Because of this, God highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name above every other name, so that at Jesus' name every knee must bend, in heaven, on the earth, and under the earth, and every tongue proclaim to the glory of God that Jesus Christ is Lord. Here we have the inner dynamics of the journey of transformation laid out right before us. Didn't grasp, or an alternative we hear is did not cling to, that letting go, emptied himself. Human likeness, humbled himself, obediently accepted death. God highly exalted. The Passion of Jesus, the Paschal Mystery, is not simply about the cross. It is most fundamentally about incarnation, letting go of not grasping at, not clinging to divinity. In the incarnation, the God who is love chooses to be conformed to our human nature, taking it on in all its fullness except for sin. God truly becomes one with us, one of us. It's not like, God becomes fully human. That's an astonishing statement, belief, faith. It's beyond our powers to really imagine. God becomes fully human. This is more of a letting go than the cross is. God lets go of divinity to take on humanity. And Rahner points out, because of incarnation, divinity is now a permanent property of humanity. Divinity is a permanent property of humanity. It's forever, to the end of time and beyond, part of humanity. But the astonishing statement to me is the second half. Humanity is now a permanent property of divinity. The incarnation didn't just go away with the resurrection. The second person of the Trinity didn't become human just for a time, and then he's released into not being a human anymore. Humanity is a permanent property of divinity now. And again, this is too big an idea to really hold, but there it is. The word passion comes from the root word passio, P-A-S-S-I-O, which means passive. Passion, this meaning of passion here is allowing oneself to be acted upon, to be conformed to another. That's the very definition of love. When we love someone, we allow ourselves to be conformed to them. You see this in married couples all the time as they grow like each other. Or you can, even in your own experience, when you end up with a really good friend, or even not a really good friend, but someone you're living with, it's an okay relationship, but they like baseball and you like opera. And some days you watch baseball with them, and by golly, you start to enjoy baseball. And sometimes they listen to opera with you, and something happens and they start to enjoy it. So we are, in love, we are conformed one to another. We are shaped by and become part of one another, okay? That's the very definition of love, to allow oneself to be conformed to another. And this is what happens in incarnation. Divinity, the very God who is madly in love with us, truly becomes flesh and dwells among and with us. So the passion of Jesus encompasses the incarnation, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's all of those that make up the passion, not just this cross. Incarnation, life, death, and resurrection. God lays aside divinity and takes on the fullness of our humanity in the person of Jesus incarnate. And Jesus, the Word made flesh, in laying down his life, becomes the risen Christ. This is the paradigm for all transformation. And it shows us that God is a self-emptying and vulnerable God. It is not possible to love without being vulnerable. It's not possible. If you really love someone, you're vulnerable. If you really are loved by someone, you're vulnerable. You can't love without being vulnerable. And God is love. So God necessarily, the Holy One, is vulnerable. And we, in our vulnerability, are mirroring the Holy One. In our vulnerability, we're mirroring the Holy One. So, when we push aside our vulnerability, we're pushing away the likeness of God in which we're made. Let me say that again. If we push aside, if we ignore or push aside or resist our vulnerability, we don't want to be vulnerable. We're pushing aside the image of God in which we're made, because God is a vulnerable God. In laying down his life freely, Jesus becomes the cosmic Christ, drawing all creation forward toward the omega point. The resurrection narratives present a transformed Jesus. Even his closest and dearest companions, even Mary of Magdala, who had such an intimate relationship with Jesus, did not recognize him at first. All of the resurrection narratives, they don't recognize God. They don't recognize Jesus. So transformed was he. He was in a form which we did not recognize. Now, this is the kind of transformation that we are all called to, both individually and collectively. And this kind of transformation is really nothing new to us. Religious life has been in the process of transformation since it began. The forms and structures are always changing and reshaping themselves. And we are always being drawn into a fuller letting go of self and a more complete transformation into Christ. One of the things I want us to notice about each of these examples of transformation is this. Each one of them involves a profound letting go. The caterpillar lets go of itself the only way it has ever known itself to be. In the incarnation, Jesus first lets go of divinity to take on the fullness of humanity, and then lets go of his very life to become the cosmic Christ. And we let go of all that is familiar, That which we have come to think makes us who we are. But in every instance, that letting go is in order to let come. Each letting go is for the sake of something greater, fuller, richer. And remember Judy Canato's, the revelation we receive is a bit fuller each time. So, let me just do this there. The caterpillar lets go so there can be a butterfly. Jesus lets go so the Spirit can come. We let go so that religious life can be what God needs it to be in the future, even if it is in a form we do not recognize. Think back to your entrance day. Think back to the earliest foundations of your congregation. So much has changed. We don't look like our foundresses looked. We don't live in the same kinds of dwellings they lived in. We don't bear the same hardships they had. We don't have the same ministerial commitments they had. We don't follow the same horarium. So much has changed and will continue to change. Yet this is no cause for concern. It's part of life. It's part of the way the cosmos works. And while Mother Theodore may not recognize me, and Father Moreau may not recognize you by any of the externals of our lives, if we are faithful, they will recognize us by heart, by the Spirit which animates all that we do. They will know by our hearts that we are their daughters. It's not the buildings, the land, the ministry, the accomplishments of our own accomplishments or the congregations. That's not what makes us who we are. It's the embodying of the charism that makes us who we are. And we let go into God's memory all that needs to be let go of in order to allow that charism to become more fully and truly manifest in the future which comes to us. We often quote, "Behold, I am doing something new." Do you not recognize it? Doing something new in you, something new in our communities, something new in the universe. There was one day when I was reading that quote, "Behold, I'm doing something new, do you not recognize it?" When all of a sudden I thought, the truth is we don't. We don't recognize it often, and that's when we resist, because we don't recognize it. I'm going to invite you to spend this day steeped in the Paschal Mystery, in the whole sweep of that mystery: incarnation, life, death, resurrection. The Paschal Mystery as it lives inside you. Spend time on the path of transformation that Jesus trod, and that you've traveled and continue to travel. Can you identify in yourself those places where you are more afraid of no longer needing what you always have needed than you are of actually losing it? Can you identify those places in yourself? Can you identify in yourself those places where the community may be more afraid of no longer needing what is always needed than you are of actually losing it? What would it mean for you to turn those places over to the transforming action of God? What's longing to be made new in you? What's the invitation that you're experiencing? And let's now sing again, "Tune my heart according to your will," but sing it in the light of the awareness of the dynamics of transformation.
According to
So let me just read for you or pray with you a little poem prayer that Clarita found and gave to me this morning. May you have enough happiness to keep you sweet, enough trials to keep you strong, enough sorrow to keep you human, enough hope to keep you happy, enough failure to keep you humble, enough success to keep you eager, enough friends to give you comfort, enough wealth to meet your needs, enough enthusiasm to look forward, enough faith to banish depression, enough determination to make each day better than yesterday. So as you go through the rest of this day, may you have enough of whatever it is that you need. And the confidence that you will have it. When you come in this afternoon, you're going to want something to write with, I think. So just have something with you where you can write some stuff to yourself when we get to that point this afternoon, okay? All right, have a good rest of the morning.